Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Arjun and I help MBA aspirants like yourself get into the Indian School of Business PGP program. Today I'm going to be tackling essay number 2 of the PGP 2024 application, which is contemplate two distinct situations, one where you face success and one where you faced failure. Delve into the personal and interpersonal lessons that you learned from these instances. Very interesting essay. It combines elements of the usual success and failure with the actual personal and interpersonal lessons part of it, which is more into the soft skills and technical skill side. How I would initially approach this essay is to lay out a very basic structure. Divide your essay into two halves, one paragraph for success story and one paragraph for failure story. Very simple. You can play around with it, you can play around the word count. If you want to highlight your successes more, go ahead and do that. Maybe use a few extra words. If you want to highlight a very important lesson that you learned through failure, do the opposite. Make your failure paragraph slightly bigger. I leave that up to you, the personalization side. Aside from that, for each of these stories, you need to have a very basic template, which you can also play around with, but then having this template enables you to get those initial iterations out where you actually flesh out the story a little better. Give a very brief background in what you were doing at that point in time, what role you were doing, which company you were working at, what year it was maybe. Talk about what specific position that you were playing in the team, what was your ask, what is the problem statement you're trying to solve, the specific challenge that you faced, and only after you lay out all that background information, maybe 4 or 5 sentences, you move into the personal and interpersonal lesson side. What we say when we say personal lesson, what we mean is something that's related to, say, core technical skills or maybe core project management skills, which you either were found lacking or maybe you didn't act upon. So that could be something like time management or scheduling or budgeting or even something as simple as coding, let's say, right? But it needs to be something that's relevant to your specific profession and relevant to you and your role, which you perhaps didn't know or perhaps you learned through the hard way. The interpersonal skills, on the other hand, the interpersonal lesson, on the other hand, is more related to soft skills. It's related more to how you communicate with other people and how you collaborate with other people. Post MBA, that's going to form a huge chunk of your work where you're going to have to marshal a bunch of different stakeholders in order to drive them towards achieving a common goal. And there are core skills and core lessons to be learned there in steering a bunch of people towards a common goal, managing meetings, negotiating, competing against other departments and other people for resources such as budget and people. Could be anything, but there are valuable lessons to be learned there, and that's what the interpersonal lesson is more related towards. Now, of course, when it comes down to actually fleshing out these stories and maybe getting stories, I know a lot of us struggle because we don't have the simple habit of maintaining a work journal where on a weekly or monthly basis we update it, talking about what we did, what we've done until that point in time, what lessons we've learned from that, what were the successes and our failures. I think it's really important for young professionals everywhere to maintain that record, simply so that you have a more educated way of answering a question should it be asked by some senior stakeholder or, God forbid, some job interview or some college application somewhere else. So it's really useful to track your growth as a professional as well. In the event that you haven't maintained it, which I think I can speak for the majority of us, we have not maintained such a work journal, there is still one secret trick that I'm going to teach you that you can use to maybe flesh out a really good story or get a really good lesson that can be used in your business endeavors and post MBA roles worldwide. And that is to look at the project management professional knowledge areas framework. You might be a little confused at this point in time. You don't want to become a project manager, you want to become a product manager or a consultant or an entrepreneur. What does project management have to do with you? That's where I like to break that stereotype a little. Project management is used in literally every single role that is available out there to MBAs. At least some aspect of it and some knowledge of it is required to successfully perform in your roles. There's an entire organization called the Project Management Institution, which compiles the best practices for project managers and gives it in a single book or dictionary, which is called the Project Management Body of Knowledge, or PMBOK. I'm not asking you to maybe go and buy the PMBOK, but at least it's good to have the 10 knowledge areas in mind when you're trying to describe what work you've done and to put your work into context. And these knowledge areas are project integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resource, communication, risk, procurement, and stakeholder engagement. I can assure you that if you just think about it carefully, if you quickly Google each of these knowledge areas and try to find out more about what it entails, you will understand that your specific story or your specific problem statement or mission slots into one or more of these areas. Why is this useful? Why should you be doing this? If you just jump a little deeper into each one of these knowledge areas, Project Management Institute talks about inputs, tools and techniques and outputs for different processes in these knowledge areas. And these processes are necessary to be completed by one or more team members or the project manager themselves in every project team. So just by looking at the inputs, tools and techniques and outputs, you're able to maybe understand what is the ideal experience or what is the ideal procedure for a project manager to complete that specific work. And once you have that ideal, you can compare the work that you've done and the activities and tasks that you completed against that ideal and then say, oh, great, these are the tools and techniques I didn't know, or these are the outputs I didn't record, or these are the inputs that I should have gotten. Maybe I should have gotten it from different people, from different managers, from different stakeholders. And because I failed to get these inputs, I was not able to complete this specific project or this specific initiative, or there was a certain failure that I faced. So without having any knowledge of your previous experience, previous lessons learned and unconscious lessons that you've learned, you're now able to put your previous projects in context just by comparing it against the compilation of knowledge by Project Management Institute. So again, if you're interested in the certification, the PMP certification itself, go ahead and get it done. I think it's really useful, especially when you're seeing roles internationally. But even otherwise, it's really useful to just know these basic things so that you can talk in a more educated and polished manner about your work that you've done and put it in context. Now, once you have a broad narrative of what lessons that you've learned from, talking about the project management knowledge areas, you need to move into trying to make your essay sound a little bit more professional. How do you make something sound professional, especially post MBA? There's actually only one simple template, and that's called the S.M.A.R.T template. Some of you may be familiar with it, but if you're not, I'll just reiterate it here. S.M.A.R.T is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Let's say you have a story, and the story is about a particular action that you took. It's a success story, but you talk about it something like, I wanted to increase sales for my company, let's say Amazon, and then I did these actions. Everybody wants to increase sales for Amazon. That's basically the point of why Amazon exists as a company. You get more sales, you cut costs, and then you get the profit. Like, that's very basic. So how do you talk about your specific role and your specific objective while working for Amazon? That's what specificity is about. You need to give sufficient enough details to narrow down the scope of the work that you are doing to a point where you say, for my role, my level, where I was at in that organization and my skills, this is a challenge that I undertook and this is how it contributed toward the broader organizational challenges. So you need to be specific. What might this sound like? Instead of saying, I wanted to increase sales, you say something like, I wanted to increase revenue for my specific product line by increasing the customer retention and customer repeat purchases. I did this by doing XYZ. That's narrowing it down and making the story really specific and really grounded so that someone who's on the other end, who's already experienced in the field, let's say they're reading your essay, they're able to immediately relate to it rather than having to search around for what the objective of what you were doing might have been. The next thing is measurable. Measurability is very important in MBA because whatever you do, it should be geared towards increasing or decreasing a specific metric. Even if you don't have a metric, let's say it's a yes-no situation. You're a consultant, you're a partner at a consulting firm, and the metric for you is whether a deal converted or not. That's still yes or no. That in itself is a metric. So a metric simply gives the audience an ability to say that, hey, this person knows what they should tackle in order to improve the situation or achieve the results that they need, and they're able to track it consistently with the right metrics. One is the right metrics, and the second thing is, of course, what is the right goal that you set through that metric. So you need to be able to say, I want to achieve 2% customer conversion on the display pages of Amazon. Or you need to say, I want to reduce the total defects from 90% to 25%. That metric allows them to say, hey, this person's definition of success is this. Anything below this is failure. Anything above this is an achievement. The next part of the acronym is Achievable. Achievable is about being realistic about your goals. I talked about being specific, now is about being realistic. And by realistic, what I mean to say is for your specific role, is this something that you should be doing? Is this something that people allow you to do? And is this something that sounds right in the minds of someone who's reading it? You may have tackled a lot of big problems in your career, but then there's a general perception of what people at your level might be doing. So you need to make sure that your narrative is able to fit into that, or fit into that pretty well. I know people who have written their essays that they increased customer conversion on their website by 100%. It depends, right? Because the industry average is that you can only improve customer conversion by 2% or 3% by doing a specific action. Then how is it that you, being an analyst or being a manager, is able to come in and suddenly increase it by 100%? Doesn't make sense, right? There's a heads and tails kind of a difference between these two numbers. So you need to be able to do a little bit of research into the kind of work that you've done and try to find out what the industry benchmarks are. Mention those industry benchmarks maybe in your essay itself and say that this is the benchmark and this is the goal that I set for myself, or this is the goal that I set for my team, and I went ahead and tried to achieve it. That gives a much more grounded sense of what you were trying to do. The next part of the acronym is relevant. Relevant goals are very important, simply because sometimes we have this temptation that we're doing some work, we know it contributes in some way towards sales or revenue. Let's say we're doing a cost cutting project and in some way it contributes towards revenue. We don't know the connection. The problem is an interviewer will immediately catch on to that. Hey, if you were trying to increase revenue, why were you sitting in a cost cutting project? What's the connection? And that's where you flounder. So you need to be able to clearly articulate the goal in such a manner that the broad organizational or team objective is this, and the work that I am doing is actually contributing towards that. So that is a relevant story. The last and perhaps very most important one is time boundedness. Given an infinite amount of time, any project or initiative that you undertake is completely possible to succeed, right? Infinite amount of time. But then an MBA is not about that. No manager out there is going to give you an infinite amount of time and resources to achieve a specific goal. You need to be able to say, hey, I will achieve X percentage of increase or decrease in this particular metric within the next X months, X years, X days, whatever it is. So you need to be able to articulate that as well in your essay. Say that we were trying to increase the overall conversion by 15% from 2.1% to 2.2% over the next 2 weeks or 1 month, whatever it is. The point I'm trying to make here is once you have a broad story through the knowledge areas and then you filter it through this SMART filter, what you will achieve at the end is a very polished essay that sounds like it's been written by a manager or a product manager or a project manager or a consultant who's already working in that field. And that can make all the difference between somebody who wants to sound like an MBA applicant versus somebody who already sounds like one who has completed an MBA. And that can provide the kind of competitive edge that you want in getting your application noticed. Of course, I've provided common templates here. The disclaimer I want to put out is you need to personalize these stories and make it sound like you didn't just grab it, copy paste it from Google and just put it in here. You need to personalize it and make it very contextual to the work that you're doing and the organizations that you worked for. That I think constitutes the bulk of work that you will be doing, because once you have the stories, it's all about making them sound personal and unique, even if the work that you've done doesn't sound unique to you. If you need any help, if you need any consultation or advice, I've provided my contact details in the video description below. Feel free to drop any comments if you have doubts or if you want me to make more videos on further topics, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you and see you next time.